This meeting is called to order. Welcome to our May board meeting, and thank you all for being here today. Before I ask Ms. Gaynor to introduce those in attendance, our Director of Athletics, Kyle Williams, would like to make a special introduction. Kyle?
Kevin. Good morning, everyone. It's with great. Okay. I knew that, Debbie.
I know.
Good morning, everyone. Let me start over. I'm thrilled to be here this morning, and I'm thrilled to announce our 10th men's basketball coach after almost 60 applications to go through and 60 matrix, by the way. And 10 Skypes and 4 people coming to the campus. I'm thrilled today to introduce our 10th men's basketball coach from Azusa Pacific, Coach Justin Leslie. Justin is married, has 3 kids, 16, 13, and 9. The 16-year-old is already being recruited, I think, by Christ Academy, okay, to play volleyball. She's 6 foot. 2. There you go. So we're excited to have Justin with us. He's hit the road running. He's got recruits coming in already this week. We had to get him some hotels and some things like that. So we're excited for him to be here, and I'm really thrilled about this. So, Justin?
Well, I just want to say that my wife, Joy, and I and our family, we couldn't be more excited to be a part of this community. In the 2 weeks that it's been now, kind of through the process, the warmth of every interaction that we've had has just been something that has been spectacular to be a part of. Talking about hitting the ground running, it's been an absolute blur. In fact, all my suits are still packed away, so I apologize. On the moving van coming out here, we're finding a place to live and the like, but everything's been smooth because the community's just been so helpful, everybody that we've met along the way, and I'm terribly optimistic for what we're going to be able to accomplish here together. It's a tremendous history, opportunity we have to recruit, just fine young men to come here and represent the institution on and off the court in an amazing fashion. And so I just look forward to getting to know everybody here and, get MSU basketball up and running and something we can all be excited about. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the time.
Coach Leslie, we were excited to have you join us here at MSU, and we look forward to your leadership.
Thank you.
Ms. Gaynor, would you please introduce the individuals in the room?
I'd be happy to. I'm going to let Coach Leslie.
You can.
You already got the oath in whichever way. Good morning. I'll start over here with Kurt Knobloch and Linda Wilson from American National Bank. We have Dr. David Carlston with our faculty senate, sorry. Kyle Williams, of course, our athletic director. Lee Kidwell, who's director of internal audit. Mary Maka, our general counsel, associate vice president Kyle Owen. We have with us Jeff Schultz from American National, vice president Keith Lamb, vice president Valerie Maxwell, controller Chris Stovall, vice president Tony Vidmar. Then we're going to go back into the corner with our media representatives. We have with us Jeremy Garza and Shatanya Clark from Channel 3. And then we have with us Vincent Sargent from Channel 6. Then Alyssa Mitchell, who's with the Wichita, and Dottie Westbrook with the staff senate. Vice President Fred Dietz. We have with us guest Ryan Sherd, Provost James Johnston, Cordell Cuffey, who is our new SGA president, and Ellie Gunderson, our current SGA president. Behind me, we have Claire Kowalik with the Times Record News, and Chris Names with IT.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge Student Regent Leah De La Garza, as this will be her final meeting. Leah, you've been an outstanding student regent and have represented the student body so well. So please tell us what you're going to do after graduation.
Good luck.
The plan is to go to law school in the fall. I have not made a decision yet. Thankfully, I've been given an extended deadline for seat deposits, so I don't have to make up my mind till the end of the month. So as soon as I know, y'all will know.
Well, thank you for your service, and we wish you well in the future.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
A few housekeeping measures. Please silence all of your devices. And if you are, Kyle, if you are asked to speak and are not seated at the table, please sit or stand near the end of the table so that you may be seen and heard as the meeting is live streamed on the web. We provide an opportunity for public comment concerning the agenda items at the beginning of each meeting. No one has signed up to speak, and so we'll move on with the rest of our agenda. Our first item is 1969, the approval of the minutes of our February board meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they will stand approved as presented. Item 1970, investment update. It's time for our yearly update by American National Bank. Ms. Maxwell, please introduce your guests.
Thank you. Pardon me. As you all know, American National Bank handles the MSU held endowments for us. And so with us today is Linda Wilson, Kurt Noblet, and Jeff Schultz. And so they have a little presentation that they'd like to make for us today. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. It's always fun to come back to campus, visit with you all. We're not only neighbors, we really, really value this relationship in many respects. We've talked about that in the past. I want to be respectful of your time this morning, but I know we have a few new regents, and so I want to take just a minute to give you a brief update on American National. We are growing. I want you to be assured that you have entrusted your funds to a very sound, growing financial institution. Like you, we've reached out into the Metroplex. We now have 11 branches. That has contributed very much to our growth. We are now $740 million in assets. Hasn't been that long that we were shooting for that 500 million bogey. And then last week in the trust department, we celebrated that we had reached the $1 billion in assets entrusted to us. So that was a big benchmark, very exciting for us. Market has played with that a little bit maybe this week, but we have some other commitments. We think that's going to be sustainable. Our staff throughout the banking system is now 205. And one of the things that makes this such a special relationship for us is that you all are such a wonderful source of our talent pool. Within the trust department now there are, well, as of Monday, there will be 4 of us employed in the trust department that are Midwestern graduates. I have my MA from, we won't say when. Kurt will be getting his MBA. He came to us as an intern through your finance program, got his BBA, and now Saturday we'll be getting his MBA, and June 1st he will be getting his MR, So he's had a big spring. And he is also working on his CFA. We also have another one through the intern program, Kurt Jackson. He has expressed an interest more in the administrative side, so he's working with some of our administrative officers, and we hope to groom him to follow in a personal trust administration path within our department. And then we will have another graduate. She will be graduating Saturday, and she will be joining us as a trust assistant, also with an eye toward grooming her on up through the administrative position. So we know we have at least 41 graduates within our group of employees. That's a pretty high percentage. I have a sense there are more. We have current students. So we're neighbors across the street in Flower Mound as well. So it's been a great partnership, a great relationship in a lot of respects, and we do appreciate you and value you and the opportunity to work with you on behalf of your students very much. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kurt.
All right, thanks, Linda. Yeah, I'm very proud of this university, and it is very interesting to get 2 degrees. It feels different, but I'm very excited, and maybe a PhD maybe on the way. Who knows? And so when you manage a portfolio, it's a very dynamic process. On the equity side, we look at 50 to 60 positions, and so those range in typically U.S. large capitalization stocks. And then for small cap stocks, we use value-added funds or ETFs, which are exchange-traded funds. And we also use those for looking at outside of the U.S. when you're looking at international markets or developing markets as well, and small cap funds, small cap capitalization companies. And one thing we look at is when we focus on the process, what you want is you want capital gains and the price to go up on those assets, and then dividends, and then bond interest on those coupons. And in the endowment, we have a growth with income objective, which means 65% is our target in equities and 32% is our target in fixed income, and that leaves 3% to be in cash equivalents or money markets. And as of 3/31/2019, we were at, as you can see, 56 in U.S. equities, but if you add the 5% international equities, you're at 61%. And so we have a 10% range where that can move as the market can move up or down. And then taxable bonds, we have 34%. And I'll talk about the fixed income side. What happened is with the yield curve and the interest rates and where they are, it's flattened so much. And if you'd watched the news, there was a lot of talk about recessions coming, was because the yield curve inverted from the 3-month yield to the 10-year and the 1-year to the 10-year. But Janet Yellen, our previous Fed chair, said because it was so flat that even though it inverted, it was not a really strong indicator as other times it has been of a recession. In our portfolio, we only buy investment grade corporate bonds. We've added a position. We have a 1 to 7 year maturity range is where we look and how to ladder those issues. We added one at Goldman Sachs Group this last year, and all the fixed income characteristics, the convexity and the duration, whether it's Macaulay or modified, those are a measure to describe how sensitive your portfolio is to a rise in interest rates. I was talking with someone prior to this, and when it comes to you're going to reduce your exposure, interest rates, they did not change them, and so the Fed's become dovish as the financial word that they use a lot. But we're looking at, you're seeing growth, and so we've positioned the portfolio in a good place to have less exposure to rising interest rates. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Jeff Schultz.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having us. On the equity side, these are general characteristics of the portfolio relative to the S&P 500, but it'd be similar if we looked at the Russell 1000. And that's primarily where the portfolio is with large cap stocks. We were rocking along pretty good last year. When we were here last March, the portfolio was up annualized 10% plus. June we're at 10.2, September 10.3, and then we hit the fourth quarter. And the annualized return when we got to the fourth quarter, we were down 4%, negative 4%. March came along, got through that first quarter, we're back up above 4%. Pretty much got a lot of that back, but things were doing really good until we got to the fourth quarter. If you look at the last 3 years, the portfolio has generally averaged about 9% as far as an annualized return for each of those time periods. Last weekend, Warren Buffett had his annual meeting in Omaha. He mentioned that stocks are ridiculously cheap, although if you look today, I guess they are cheap. The market was down by 400 points when we came into the meeting. And what he was referencing was the earnings yield. If you take the PE ratio and for that, you get an earnings yield on the market. And so on the earnings yield, it's around 5.4%. So when you compare that to a 10-year treasury that's only about 2.4%, inflation is at 2%, you can see that we'd rather have the earnings yield from equities. And so we advocate, still having a stronger position on the stocks than on the fixed income and on the bonds. It has forced, these low interest rates have forced everyone to take on riskier assets, riskier being stocks, just kind of pushing us out and to do that sort of thing. I will say, if you look through June of last year, Midwestern was fortunate with the endowment that the net return was just under 10% through June of last year. The Ivy League schools were at 8.4%, and all endowments that were reported were around 8.2%. So I'm just saying that to say that, Midwestern is done well. We haven't had all the different things, all the different asset categories, the private equity, some of the other things. It's just with stocks on one side and bonds on the other, it's a little bit of cash. And so we've been able to generate that this year. Last April when we were here, the portfolio was at $9.4 million. As of the end of April, we're at $9.8 million. We had appreciation of about roughly $650,000. And we've sent back to campus roughly $300,000 for general needs. So that went back. So if you go to this one, you can see that last 12 months, as I said, we were rocking along and we're down 4.7%. So down on it. We've had some good stocks. We've also had some stocks that didn't do very well over the last 12 months. We had NVIDIA, Delphi, Walgreens. They're down roughly 25% plus. Some good stocks that we had were Nexstar was up 91%, Microsoft up 42%. So you get some bad ones, and you hope you get more good ones, more good stocks, kind of elevating the whole portfolio, but take it to the end. We still see stocks as being cheap, as I mentioned, the earnings yield. Inflation's at 2%. We don't think interest rates are going to go up much, and so we're still going to push a little bit harder on the stocks. When you look at what Germany's paying for their 10-year bonds at near zero, you have Japan is at negative rates, Switzerland's at negative rates. It's hard to see where our interest rates in the U.S. can appreciate significantly. So we'll probably be in this range for some time. There's a lot of noise. We had North Korea fire off a missile this morning, so you have that going on. You got everything going on with Congress. A little bit of stuff going on at the White House. We've got tariffs, and that's what kind of blew the market up in the fourth quarter of last year. And then we have another election coming up. And so I remember telling Sean, it's like, if we get through this next election, we're about to say we're going to get through this next election, it'll be all right. So we just, we like how the portfolio is structured presently, and we're looking for opportunities just to make sure we protect the value of the corpus and keep it moving forward. So when that changes, we'll go more aggressively to cash or to bonds if we think if the time calls for it. But really, we're cautious, but we're optimists in seeing where this will go. Linda did mention that we have actually more than 4 graduates in the bank that went to Midwest or within our department. But Dwight Berry is one of our graduates from Midwestern in 1972, and he was just honored by the Texas Bankers Association for 50 years of service. So quite a pat on his back, and obviously, good product from Midwestern State University. So. Mickey McMillan is the young woman. She'll graduate Saturday with an economics degree, and she starts Monday for us. So we find Midwestern's been a great source of talent for our group. So really proud of everything everyone's doing here. So that concludes my report, and I'll open up to questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for being here and for all of your efforts on behalf of MSU.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Item 1971, the University Leadership Report. Dr. Shipley.
Thank you. I look forward to introducing a young scholar when she can get out of her student teaching this morning, Carolyn Duquet, and she's going to make some remarks to us when she's able to come in. I'd like you to look at page 16 of your board book. I'd like to talk about the Great Places to Work survey that's run by Modern Think, a company that publishes the results of the survey in the Chronicle of Higher Education. And this is a national survey that appears right around spring break. So if you're not thinking the response is very high, the time it lands is not, in my opinion, optimal. But we gave this last spring as a as an objective check-in with our faculty and staff on their opinions about their workplace, Midwestern State University. And while you would like to see all red and blue in the score chart, that's unrealistic. So when I've done this at 3 other institutions, these scores are very similar to the scores I've seen before. And so what I'd like to start with is how do we compare to our peers? So important to me is that as you look at our scores, they're very similar to other 4-year institutions around the United States. They're they're highest in pride, which is really good, that we're proud of who we are and excited to be here. And then they have several high points in job satisfaction and supervision. I'm particularly gratified to see senior leadership is much higher here than with our peers. That could be because both James and I are new, and they haven't gotten to know us yet, but I'm hoping that doesn't drop much. But when you get down toward the bottom of the chart, you see a lot of white. And those are the areas that we all struggle with in higher education. You can see that our peers struggle just like we do. Things, particularly communication, it's a big job, it's a big place, and people always wish the communication and collaboration were better. And so I think overall it's a fairly positive benchmark. I'd like all of those scores to go up, but the important thing to me is that we did the survey and we know how we compare to our peers. If you notice the survey average, 64% is just almost in the good category. So we're just 1% away from good in our overall score. So the important page is the second page, page 17, and you can see on that how we break out by job category. And you'll see a lot of red under administration, and that's because the people that are making the decisions often think they're making really good decisions and they're very happy about how well the institution is doing. And that's what you see with our administration. And you have faculty being more critical because they're trained to be critical and they're on the ground and they're facing challenges. And then you have kind of a different view by staff because they're living in a world that's slightly different from the faculty. And so you look overall at our averages, we stay in a blue and a dark blue range, which is good to very good. So it's not the very best, but it's a good score to have. What the biggest challenges are, I believe, are as always in communication, but the scores that bothered me the most were the low scores on teaching environment. And I've pushed back with some of our groups to say, you know, any of us who walk on this campus, it looks like we've got wonderful facilities, and we do, but that teaching environment is really about our institutional responsiveness to the needs that teachers have. When you're up in front of the classroom and you can't get your screen to come up, when you can't connect with technology, or when you don't have the resources, they really mention that we're outgrowing a lot of our furniture. So while we've seen new buildings being put in place, people expect more of furniture now than you might see in a high school classroom. They like different sizes of furniture, more comfort in furniture. So I think this survey helps us get at some of the frustrations and prioritize them and begin to answer them. So that's why I like giving this survey. We're going to give it about every 3 years. It's an objective view, and we'll keep trying to dig down into the input. The last thing I'd like to say is that I really appreciated the staff senate digging into this and saying, you know, maybe one way to increase communication and collaboration is to have more open forums. So we've now presented, Dottie, 2 or 3? We've done 2, we've got 1 lined up for fall, and we've had really good attendance at those. James and I spoke at the first one, and then Fred and Keith at the second one, and we had over 100 people show up at both of those to ask good questions and interact with us. And so we're looking forward to continuing those, probably 1 a semester. The Faculty Senate has asked us to be sure and keep track of the suggestions made and be able next year to come back and say how we've acted on them. So I'll be happy to take any questions on that before I move on. You will see this again. I'd like to give you a quick legislative update. As you know, we're not done yet. The legislative session ends on Memorial Day, so 18 days, but who's counting? Who's counting? Who's counting? School finance is the top topic, and so we're hoping to get school finance decisions made so we can get the higher ed decisions moving. And the main bill we look at is the appropriations bill. And so what is happening this year, as is common, the House and Senate are approaching appropriations differently, but both House and Senate show a tendency toward increase rather than decrease. Last session, we came out with a decrease in our budget. If enrollment is a positive factor for us in the final deliberations, we could look at a small increase in our budget this year. Several factors at play that could influence us positively or negatively. We have a small institution supplement. That's realizing that as a smaller institution, we carry a heavier administrative load than a system who handles all the administration, and the universities don't have to handle that. And so there may be increases in the small institution supplement. We can benefit from hold harmless funding, which stipulates that we can't be cut a dramatic amount, so that is still in the budget for now. We are looking at a $180,000 increase because of the teacher retirement system increase in the employer contribution. So we will probably be putting more into benefits. And Debbie and I have really enjoyed walking the halls and talking about our $2 million request to offset the investment we had in Flower Mound. And what we've noticed this year is a lot more people will talk to us. And when you have one senator and one representative, sometimes the other offices aren't that open to you, but because we're in new counties, we have more representatives and senators aware of Midwestern and aware of our services, and we've even had people ask to speak to us. So it's been very refreshing, and we think we've gotten a good report out to them, and we're hoping to see that $2 million in special item request. It just will depend how things end up. Right now, House and Senate conferees continue to work on the budget behind closed doors, and we think the earliest we'll be hearing about budget decisions is next week. Other topics of legislation that are particularly important to higher education is an intense attention to free speech. So we have bills moving through both the House and the Senate to guarantee free speech on college campuses. Senate Bill 18 has been approved by the Senate, the House Higher Ed Committee, and now it's moving to the full House. House Bill 2100 was just approved by the House and has now been received by the Senate. And so it's likely we'll be coming back to you to work on some changes to our free speech principles if those legislative issues change. There is quite a bit of attention also about campus sexual assault. We've made great progress here on campus with our Title IX efforts and our Clery efforts, but there could be additional legislation around that. And then a particularly detailed topic is transferability, transfer credits. And there's a lot of frustration by legislators around their constituents complaining that they accrue credits that don't end up transferring toward a degree. And I think we're going to see some fairly detailed approaches to transfer, such as course sequencing, making sure students have a plan for a major after 30 hours, and possibly the development of a new core curriculum by the coordinating board. The tuition revenue bonds that are building this beautiful building, our health science building, are up again for consideration. We have a request out from Midwestern State. That request is for $10 million in infrastructure, $25 million for Bolin, and $10 million for this building. It's our oldest building on campus. It has infrastructure challenges. Representative Frank has moved our TRB forward in the House. In the Senate, they're waiting to see what happens with school finance before we hear. We did not, Tony, when you were there, when Regent Fidelity walked the halls with us, we did not get a lot of encouragement that TRB would go through. So we're waiting to see what happens to that. We have been really pleased with the work of Senator Fallon and Representative Frank. They've been very supportive. They've stayed in touch with us. They've given us guidance, and I just want to publicly say how much that's meant to us, as well as some of the legislators around the Flower Mound facility. Debbie and I plan to provide a more extensive update to you by the 16th of May, so as soon as we know something, you will also know. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
June.
16th of June, sorry.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is. 16th of June, thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, that's it.
Thank you for this information, and welcome, Karen. The executive session will be moved to the end of today's agenda. We will now move on to committee-related matters. Regent Marks, please present the enrollment, management, academic, and student affairs related matters.
Thank you, Chairman Crosno. Before I begin, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to meet with our committee beforehand. I thought it was, I think we all agreed that it was a good move. It allowed us to ask some more thoughtful questions, I think, that we wouldn't have the time to ask when we are in this session. So thank you for that. I hope we get to continue that. The first item is 19-73. Dr. David Carlston, Faculty Senate Chairman, will present the faculty report. David?
Feeling a little sheepish and being critical, a little sensitive to that, especially as I'm grading papers and getting feedback from my students about my grading. From a faculty report, I think this is an exciting time of year for faculty as we're kind of wrapping things up. Certainly we're buried in offices at this point, kind of paying the price for the things that we require during the semester, but it is an exciting time to see student progress. We're excited for commencement and be able to watch our students launch from the institution, and we know that there are exciting things ahead of them. So this is an upbeat time. I think one of the things that the board will be considering today is a tenure and promotion for a number of faculty. I certainly appreciate your time in reviewing and talking about these candidates. I don't know if Dr. Johnson will wheel in the cart of binders, right? Which is kind of the collective life work of those individuals. I know that you'll get a synopsis of the things that they've been involved in and that they're doing. I would encourage you to listen with a critical ear to the variety of activities in which the faculty are involved. It's certainly much more than just the classroom, and the opportunity to reach out and impact students and community is significant. So certainly appreciate your time going through that. The decisions and recommendations that you make and the approvals that you make have a significant impact in the life of those individuals. Also, I just want to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Shipley said in terms of the forums. Those have been very well attended. I think the opportunity to hear and express concerns and hear follow-up and how those things are addressed is going to be very beneficial in terms of overall communication. Along those lines, I think the communication between, I know certainly between the faculty and the administration has continued to grow and improve. We're very excited by the support that the institution put behind the Evergreen study, not only in commissioning that and your approval of those funds for that, but in terms of working with the auditor, the reviewer, to make sure that the focus of those efforts was exactly where it was needed. So we certainly appreciate that support. There are a couple of things that have kind of come about from that we're very optimistic about. I know the institute or the administration is looking at implementing some initial changes to address faculty work-life balance and workload. So those initiatives are very, very exciting. Dr. Johnson is working with Ad Astra, which is a software package that I think will make a big difference in terms of faculty workload as well. Some of the concerns as we were talking with the representative from Evergreen, we heard a couple of times, well, those are staffing issues, we can't really address those, and so Ad Astra is a nice software to help us kind of track staffing needs and allocation of faculty teaching resources in order to kind of smooth things out overall. So that will be very, very helpful. The other thing that we appreciate, we've got the first document electronically now. We had our summer contracts. We can electronically take care of those, and so we are optimistic that paper will go away on campus at some point. It's very difficult to express the amount of time that we spend creating forms that get lost or signing, and having the frustration that we feel from students and being available to sign this form or that form for the third, fourth, fifth time, right? And so one of the things that we're very optimistic and working with the administration to do is really make these processes simpler for students. whether that be enrollment and getting on a wait list so that process is taking care of itself, or getting degree plans online. Removing paper and removing some of those barriers is certainly going to be a very important. So I think in general, things are looking good for faculty at this point. We're very happy with the responsiveness of the administration. Look forward to getting the results back from Evergreen and going through the tenure and promotion policy next year. It's always fun to rip open some of the bigger policies and that affect everybody's life in a very intimate way. But I think we have the foundation of communication to make that a successful process. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Our next item is 19-74 staff report. Ms. Dottie Westbrook, Staff Senate Chair, will present the staff report.
Good morning. I will be brief. We have had a slow spring, as my spring has been extremely busy with advising, but I just personally want to thank Dr. Shipley, Provost Johnston, Mr. Dietz, and Dr. Lamb for being willing to do these town halls. I have found it very beneficial and very informative, and I ask too many questions anyways, but that's okay. But I really am thrilled that the administration seems to be listening to us. They are listening to us. And I think that helps a lot with morale and even more of community, family atmosphere. So that's my report, and I'm excited to be here. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Item 19-75, Student Government Report. Ms. Ellie Gunderson, outgoing SGA President, will present her report and will introduce the newly elected President.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me. So this semester we passed two bills. One is to sanction the event of the Culture Fest that we had in the fall that we talked about in the November meeting. And then the second was the Domestic Violence Awareness Purple Wings. So we want to make sure those events happen every year because they brought something unique to campus this year. And we don't currently have anything for domestic violence awareness that occurs every single year. So it's kind of dependent on the student body of the time. So with sanctioning these events, it ensures that they'll happen. We'll have that awareness on campus every year to come. So that was really special to us. And we also had Finals Frenzy last Thursday, and we brought back the card smash for all the students. That was fun. I think it was a hit. And then elections wrap up. So our secretary is actually Sierra Scott next year, which we're really excited about everyone coming in. I want to add that. And Shelby Stogdell will be our vice president, who also serves on the Model UN team. And then I would like to introduce Curdell Cuppy as our new SGA president.
Hello everybody, my name is Curdell Cuppy, as she said. I am a finance sophomore and I'm also a double minor in global studies and French because I hope to work in the field of international affairs. In terms of campus involvement, I served as a senior class senator for this academic year in the Student Government Association, and I really enjoyed my service, so I wanted to continue that service. So I'm really happy that I got elected as the president so I could serve the student community. I'm also involved in the Student Ambassador Program, and I'm also a red wine honors student. And I'm from the Commonwealth of Dominica, which is a very small island, relatively small island in the middle of the Caribbean.
Well, thank you so much. It has been an honor serving this year, and I've had a blast doing it. It's been one of the best experiences ever. So I will open the floor to any questions.
Any questions? Well, before you leave, we'd like to find out what your plans are. I know you're graduating Saturday.
Yes, ma'am. My plan is to work on a campaign for a year in Austin, so I have a few interviews when I get back. And then I'm also going to law school the following year. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much.
right. And happy congratulations. We look forward to working with you next year.
And I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 19-76, athletics report. Mr. Williams' report is presented in the board book. He will comment on the academic performance of our student athletes and answer any questions you may have. The written report is on page 24.
Good morning. Thank you again for having us and welcoming our new basketball coach. Really excited about Justin being here. So, a couple of things, just updates, if I may, on your kind of where we are on some things as far as golf is concerned. We won the LSC championship, and so as we speak, they are teeing up in St. George, Utah, for the Super Regional, which is again Dixie State is hosting it this year, and so we're expecting good things there. It was a great last week for our men's golf team. Also with that, the Byron Nelson is going on in Fort Worth, I guess. Is that right, Sean?
Dallas.
Okay, thank you. One of our own, Derek Olin, is teeing up at 1:30 today. Derek was a golfer here, All-American golfer, has continued the process, continued the work, gotten the sponsors to help him a little bit, certainly, through all of this on the expense side, and so we're anxious to watch. We're hoping, gosh, wouldn't it be great to make the cut and get into the weekend? So anyway, Derek Olin is one of our own, and so great student, great Marie Morgan Award winner, all of those things. So we're very proud of Derek and what he's done up to this point. So look forward to that. Men's and women's tennis, they continue to amaze me, to be honest. They won the Lone Star Conference last week in Waco. And we get to play again, as we say. We are hosting regionals. We are the #1 seed in both men and women. We get to play here on Sunday at 2, the guys, and then the girls play Monday at 2 as well here at the tennis center. So again, we got great folks, great coaches, certainly, and tennis continues to really be a part of that. If we win, and I think, honestly, it looks pretty darn good to me, we will then go to the NCAA National Championship in Florida. So I'm looking at travel arrangements. I mean, I'm not trying to, do anything here just too early, but obviously we're anticipating good things there. So we appreciate that. This past Tuesday night, the WFISD had their Partnerships in Education Award. I think Ms. March knows a little bit about that. We were nominated by Zunde Elementary with our 2nd and 7 campaign, reading committee campaign that we go and take our students and read to 2nd graders. And they in turn nominated us, and we won. So we were the PI Program of the Year Awards award winner. And so, again, for our reading program, the 24 Strong week that we had, 24 Acts of Kindness that we continue to enjoy and prosper with. And so we're just, again, we got great kids, folks. And now, I'm ready for them to go home and see Mom and Daddy, but we got great kids here. And so we're very proud of that, very proud of Reagan Foster and her leadership in trying to get that going as well. So we also have a new baby in our midst, Amanda Snodgrass. Amanda and Craig Snodgrass had a baby Tuesday. So we're excited for Clayton David to be with us. I've given her 2 weeks.
No, stop.
And so much as she needs. So, okay. The other part of this is, and I've already kind of apologized to OQ about this. I wanted to get you some academic goals and some things. As you've seen here, we've done some great things in 2018 and 19, and the planned initiatives. I'm going to do that in August. I believe it's August 1st now. I think is our next meeting, if you don't mind. We have, and a couple of things for that. We are in finals right now, certainly. We'll know our grades next week. We're crossing our fingers on all that stuff. And then the academic success rate, and I'll elaborate in August if you will allow me to do that, about it compares us to the to the overall NCAA Division II folks. And so our academic success rate and our Fed rate, there's some things in there that I want to really be able to explain to you. And then at the same time, we're going to have a committee meeting with our coaches. It's been hard to get to those guys and girls, honestly. And so we're going to do that. So we've already got meetings set up in June for them to come in and talk about our GPAs. And so we will have that August 1st, if you'll allow me to do that. So I apologize for it not being today. But I just needed a little bit more information, and we're now getting that from the NCAA as well. So I hope that's okay. Any questions on that in that regard going forward? Okay. We got 27 graduating tomorrow. We're excited about that. We had a senior brunch for those that could come last week at the chapel, which is a great place to have that, certainly, and we stole them. And it was just a great time. I think we can grow on that, grow that to a really, really neat thing. So we're excited. We're excited about the summer. The work really gets going in the summer with us, from the corporates and all of those things that go with that, and we're excited to really get into next season. And of course, as you know, we're going to our first FBS team. We're going to play football at Northwest Louisiana in September the 7th is our first game there, and we get a little money from it, which is awesome, and so we can do other things. So we're excited about that as well. So, anything?
Kyle, Jim and I attended the Meals on Wheels appreciation
Yes.
dinner the other night,
Yes.
and our server, I believe, was Zach,
Yes.
the quarterback,
Yes.
and the entire football team
Yes.
is serving.
Meals on Wheels is one of the ones that Coach Maskell and his guys really get after, and Coach Land as well, our tennis. So
Quality and polite,
Yes.
engaging. They did a very nice job representing
good.
you all. So
That's
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 19-77, Enrollment Management Report. Mr. D's report is provided in the board book. Beginning on page 26, he will highlight a few topics, and he is prepared to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. A few things taking place within enrollment management. As you will notice on page 26, we will be unveiling a new program, launching a new program. We worked with several offices on campus to put this together, and it is called the MSU Reboot. Special thanks to Chris Stovall, who provided a lot of information in terms of financial information and how we could go about this. So we appreciate the business office work on that. This program is really designed to, one, focus on affordability, but also to allow students who were formerly here, who left the institution owing a debt, allow them to come back and in essence earn a way to pay off that debt. Payoff may not be the correct term, but a way for us to credit that debt so that it's not hanging over them. So we looked at a population going back as far as we could as to how many students still owed the institution money who did not have a degree. And so this is modeled after some other institutions that are doing something similar. And there are about 1,200 students who left MSU who did not earn a degree that still had an amount owed, and they're in collections. The amount owed being between that $1,500 and $250 amount. And so we are able to run those names through the clearinghouse, which is a vendor that provides us graduation information, and determined that about half of those students actually did earn a degree from somewhere else. So about 600 plus have not earned a degree that are still out there that still owe this debt. So we wanted an opportunity for them to come back, complete their degree, and so this is what this program is intended to do, to try and help those students. And in essence, for every 6 hours they complete, we will take care of $500 of that past debt. They still have to pay their current tuition. They have to stay current on everything that they're enrolled in. But this is an opportunity to help them with that past debt. So we'll be unveiling this and moving forward with it. The name, MSU Reboot, actually came from Academic Affairs. Dr. Kristen Garrison came up with that name. We had a lot of names. Some of them are really bad. And then this is the best one and a really good one, and we're pleased that we landed on that. And so we'll get that out on the web and start pushing it for beginning fall of 19. So we're excited about that. A lot of you have heard probably regarding a little bit of admissions mishap. Well, I shouldn't call it a mishap. It's really some cast a bad light on admissions this past semester. And so those of us in the admissions industry were really concerned about it. I will say there are millions of students who go through the admissions process yearly and have no problem and no issue. So while this is a small number, it still casts a really bad shadow on the industry. So the governor of Texas, I think, reached out to almost, I think, every institution to take a look at what this means for us. And so I convened a group together to look at our processes, what we're doing, how we're operating. And there are several things in here that I think we can say positively we're really proactive about our admissions process, how we work, how we operate. And even prior to my arrival a couple of years ago, Dr. Shipley and I think the faculty, might have been David, really wanted to look at admissions and transparency and how we operate. And so that was done a couple of years ago, a detailed report that really looked at our processes. And I think that was a good thing to do because it really shed some transparency in how we admit, who we're admitting, and those types of things. We also recently went through a financial aid audit. Some of these things are a little outside the purview of just admissions, but are important part of the admissions process. We just went through a financial aid audit that was very successful, no findings, a clean audit. Ms. Kidwell is currently reviewing international services and their process, and she'll have recommendations as to efficiencies coming forward. I have talked to her as well about doing a formal admissions audit. Let's look at our operation, how we're doing, what we're doing, and where we stand from that standpoint. Within the admissions process as a whole, most of it is quantitative in terms of how we measure students and get them admitted. There are also decision trees, and so it's not just looking at a file and admitting or not admitting someone. There is a detailed process as to how we admit. So that's good that we have that in place. It really keeps us in step and in motion as we're making decisions. Students can appeal their admission decisions. We have a process for that as well that's committee reviewed, and so that it's not falling on just one person to make that decision. It is a committee process. And I think ultimately our student information system is security oriented as well. It's really shut down in terms of who has access to what, security, those types of things. So we feel like we're in a really good place from an admission standpoint, from a process standpoint, from a security standpoint. I talked briefly with Ms. Kidwell, and I think she agrees as well that we're not worried about anything from a standpoint that has happened nationally across the country. So we are within financial aid implementing a new program based on some of the retention data that we'll share later. We have seen that students with unmet financial need is one of the issues within retention. We're seeing that group of students not returning. So one of the things we're looking at is implementing a housing grant for students who are going to come to MSU, live on campus, and we're going to offer those students a $1,500 grant to help them offset some of their expenses. This group of students is a group that is not getting a lot of financial aid. So this is a group that's above Pell Grant recipient, above Texas Grant. They're really what we're concerned about in the industry is that middle income group, that, you know, they're really good students. They might not be high enough to get scholarship, but they're a good, solid student in the classroom. Their income is just above thresholds that they're not eligible for grant aid. And so we saw this as an opportunity to award a $1,500 grant. Dr. Lamb and I worked on this, and financial aid and several others. And the beauty is that Keith has agreed to pay for it. So, so we're looking at, you know, hopefully this will have an impact in the fall class. And I think we're also targeting students that are a little farther away from campus, trying to maybe make a dent in some of the larger metropolitan areas throughout Texas. So that's being awarded this fall. Later in the meeting, I believe you'll be recommended to approve our list of graduates for May 19 commencement. We are currently looking at and close to implementing a transcript service. David mentioned this a little bit about paper. We are paper heavy in many things, and so we're looking to have an automated system with transcript ordering and requesting to where it can be done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so students don't have to do anything from a paper standpoint. And so we're close to that. There will be a fee tied to that, but we're not sure where that fee will fall yet. The good thing is vendors that do this, they don't charge a lot of it. There's no implementation charge. There's typically just a fee for the actual request of the transcript. So we'll look at that. We're excited about moving that forward, and hopefully we can get that implemented this fall. Institutional research and assessment, a big item is that we submitted our 5-year report that was due in March, and so that is off. We'll get results this summer. On the opposite side, we have to turn around pretty quickly, and I let Dr. Shipley know this, and she wasn't happy with me that we have to start our 10-year process pretty quickly. And we'll actually, I haven't shared that with the provost either, we'll have to start this fall on the 10-year process, which is much more involved than the 5-year process. And so our 10-year, we are up for review. Actually, they'll be on campus in 2023. I think it's December of 2023. But we'll need to get things in 2022. So it's, stop shaking your head, Dr. Shipley. And there's also going to be an office name change for institutional research. We're going to change it to institutional research, and assessment will be changed to institutional effectiveness. That better reflects what that office does. Also, it really aligns with our accrediting body as to what they're seeing as well. So that's my enrollment management report. Any questions?
Carolyn Duquesne is here.
You want me to jump in?
Thank you. I did really take a break.
Okay.
Dr. Shipley, would you like to now?
Yes, I would, if I can find my page at the end. Carolyn Duquesne is here, our young scholar, and we're very pleased to have her. She's going to move up to the front so that we can all catch her on camera. She's been student teaching today. Carolyn was with us when she first received her Young Scholarship, and we were all so pleased to see the joy with which she promised us she'd do a great job and move forward with that scholarship. She's graduating with a 3.8 grade point average in special education, early childhood through 6th grade. We'd like just to take a few minutes and let her quickly summarize her experience as a young scholar, and more importantly, even tell us what she's going to do next.
Hi, I'm so sorry for the delay. This has been a challenging semester, and not just because of the incident today, but just in general. I have been student teaching for the past 14 weeks, and that has been challenging in itself. I have had 2 placements. I can't believe it's been 3 years since we last met. I'm just telling you about this semester alone. Since we last met,
I have transferred my major to special education after joining an organization called Council for Exceptional Children, and there I was exposed to a lot of people and students and children with special needs, and thereafter I found a sort of passion, you could say, and I know that my main focus was education, and I know that I'm going to have students with needs and disabilities in my classroom regardless if I'm a special education teacher or a gen ed teacher, and I just wanted to become more knowledgeable of all of my students and reaching all of my students in their interest and their needs. And so I thought that the best way to reach those students and become more knowledgeable of how to approach them would be to switch my major to special education. And although I haven't been placed in the special education classroom, I did get the opportunity in my second placement of clinical teaching to observe different teachers and grade levels, which I haven't had much exposure to. I've mainly focused with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And just this past week, they've given me the opportunity to observe the lower grade levels, such as pre-K and first, and that's not what I want to focus on. Even just my second placement was 2nd grade, and although that's a sweet spot for many people, I was like, this is not this is not it. So at least I've become more aware of where my strengths and weaknesses are in regards to that. And I was given the opportunity to observe and really work in a special education classroom. And it's crazy because I'm supposed to be updating you on kind of years worth of information that I've picked up and learned along the way, and I'm giving you information on this week because there's so much that I've learned just in this week alone, and observing those special education classrooms, I've learned how they kind of handle those behavioral issues. And this second placement has really taught me a lot because I've learned a lot about the evidence-based practices and how the community works together and how they strive for a goal as a team. And I didn't really get to witness that a lot in my first placement. My first placement focused solely on kind of community and welcoming the students with open arms. So I learned a lot about the people-based skills, the interpersonal-based skills, and relating the information to the students, whereas my second placement, I also got to observe that and kind of implement those practices, as well as learn about the effective practices and approaches. And I'm so thankful for both of my mentor teachers for kind of guiding me along the way and giving me other resources and research to read upon and kind of better implement the art of teaching, because it is an art. And this scholarship also gave me the opportunity to study abroad this summer. And that is something that is incredible. I don't even know where to begin with that. I feel like I was blessed with the professors that I've had for my college career, and that includes the teacher that I had studying abroad in London. I had Angel Cartwright, and it was a class that I've already taken because finally they've given the opportunity for education majors to take education courses across seas. However, I had already taken all of the courses, so I was more of an independent study. And so she was very flexible, thankfully, as teachers are. And I was able to sightsee and meet other individuals from different universities, which I had never had the opportunity to do. So now I can gladly say that I have friends both at Midwestern and in other universities that I know are longtime friendships. And although it was more of a review, now I was able to actually apply the information that I had learned in my classroom settings to the real world and become more globally aware I wouldn't say I'm quite there yet, but it was a little bit more than what I had been exposed to. And now those are experiences that I can share with my students. In my first placement, they had this weekly thing that they were carrying out about giving 3 clues and 1 clue a day, and the students had to kind of use those clues to inference which individual in the school building those clues were talking about. And then finally on Friday, it was a letter. They didn't expose themselves, but it gave them a little bit more. So we worked on those inferencing skills, and one of the individuals had actually gone to London in one of their clues, and they were trying to inference which individual they were talking about, and I was able to connect that information to myself and share more of my experiences studying abroad with them, just with that little bit of clue of another individual in the building. And so when I was able to share that information, it made me feel good, because these students, they were a lot of economically disadvantaged students, and they kind of looked to me as a model because I look like them, and I was sort of their representation. And then for me to expose that information, like, oh yeah, I've been to here, they're like, no way, like, how was it, like, how did you do it? And I was like, well, you work hard in your grades, and you try, and there are going to be people that notice you. And thankfully, that's what happened in my case.
So Carolyn, we just wanted to thank you and tell you good luck with your future, and we're very proud of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I wanted to bring this because this is actually one of the schools that, Life School is one of the schools that I have been keeping in contact with, and I wasn't expecting it to go the way it, big room. I kind of wanted to pass it around, but just to Life School, I met at a career fair here at MSU, and I gave them my resume, and this is one of the schools that have kind of expressed both the interpersonal relationships as well as the professional. And from what I've learned in these 2 placements, I feel like this school is the one that I'm more leaning towards, and I just wanted to give that information out because we have been keeping in contact, and there is that connection. So for future plans, it's it's this Life School with the students that I can relate to, and it's also placed kind of around the neighborhood that I grew up in. So.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Do y'all have questions for her?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 19-78, the retention report. Provost Johnston, Vice President Dees, and Vice President Lamb will present information related to student retention. This is a topic of great interest to all of us, and we look forward to the information they're going to provide. The retention summary begins on page 29.
Thanks again, Madam Chair. So to provide a little bit of context here before we dive into this, retention has been the focus of within enrollment management, student affairs, and academic affairs this past fall semester, going into the winter, spring semester. I do want to share a few things before we jump into the actual presentation. This was really looking at 3 things, if you want to break this presentation out. Demographic trends, kind of what our student population looks like in this retention analysis. What our academic trends are. Dr. Johnston will talk about that. And then also student life, student engagement. Dr. Lamb will talk about that, and kind of how it all weaves together. To qualify, some of the numbers you're going to see are they're interesting. They provide a good story for us. But I think it's important to know we're doing some really good things with a lot of really good groups on campus. And I talked about this a little bit in the committee earlier. Some examples are Pretty Scholars. We're doing wonderful things with them. They love it here. They're engaged and they're staying. honors program. Students are engaged and committed and staying here at the institution. International students. You know, one of the best models out there is athletics. Athletes here are retained at a good rate, a little bit higher than where we are as an institution as a whole. So there's some populations where we really can learn something as to how to implement that across the whole campus. So we'll jump into this. So this is a trend that we've seen over the last 5 years of where we're going in terms of our retention rate. So as you can see, in fall of 13 to fall of 17, we dropped about 8 percentage points roughly. And so we really need to look at this. Why was this happening? What was going on? And so the information that we really gleaned was there was a little bit of a shift in terms of who we're recruiting, how we recruit, and those students coming to the institution. So, and we'll get into that a little later to show you what I mean by that. But for the institution to sustain enrollment or even to consider growing enrollment, we had to go to different populations, farther away, where the masses were, so to speak. So this is where we are currently at 64.6% in terms of our retention rate. So where are the losses? We wanted to look at those students who came in fall of 17, and when I say those students, I'm referring only to first-time freshmen. That's what we're really looking at in terms of retention. So the students who came in fall of 17 who did not return for fall of 18. So our fall of 17 entering class was roughly about 814 freshmen, and we lost 288 students. So 288 students did not return for fall of 18. And so, you know, let's look at that. Let's dive into it. Let's see what that population looks like. And these, we'll get a little more detail on these demographics as well. But the Metroplex. So a good percentage of that 288 came from the Metroplex. That goes back to a little bit of what I was talking about us changing our recruiting, going after a different population, a little bit farther away from campus. And so that was something that kind of stood out at us as to that's an area that we could focus on. And then the race breakdown as well in terms of where that falls. I think the next slide I have has a little better context on that. I may not have it in this one. Okay. So this is really a summary of what we know. We know that 72% of that 288 who did not return lived in university housing. We know that 66% of non-returners have unmet financial need. We saw this really as a big, something that really stood out at us, is that students who have unmet need are not returning. And so that $1,500 grant that I talked about, we think might help that gap a little bit. 56% of non-returners didn't do very well their first semester. And that seems like that may be, makes sense. Students who don't do well don't return. It was a little higher percentage, or the 56%. I think that on the other side of that, we had 44% who did well and are doing okay their first semester. But that 0 to 1.99 GPA is really an indicator for us. That should be something that we should really focus on and look at and engage those students on campus. Again, the geographic breakdown, 52% came from those areas, with about 39% from the Metroplex. Almost 40%, 38% did not meet TSI, which is the Texas Success Initiative. That basically is what students on graduation from high school or while they're in high school need to show proficiency in English and math. And so I say show, they need to take the TSI exam to show where they fall. And then when they come here, we need to then, and we do, put them in remediation or help them in some of those areas the first year of their freshman year. 35% of non-returners ranked in the second quarter and 28% in the third quarter. So, you know, in many instances, this ranking is kind of the bread and butter for a lot of institutions. It's that middle 50% of students. And so this was something that stood out to us too, as to what would we be able to do to help this group as well when they come to the institution. This is looking at all 31 four-year public institutions and where Midwestern falls. We're at about 65%, but we're roughly in the bottom quarter, but we have been as high as 72%, which we were in 2013, which is where UT El Paso and University of Houston are currently. So that's a little bit on kind of the demographic information that we're seeing. Again, that's a summary of some analysis we've done. We kind of pulled out the high points. And then Dr. Johnson's going to talk a little bit about academic side and what we've seen on that.
So, something I believe Regent Hessing asked in the last meeting about DFWI data and how we use that. And I realize that native text and I have the ability to say an acronym and make it become its own word, but that is students that earned a grade of D or F or assigned a W or I in that course, and what we do with those data as we as part of this analysis. Some parts of retention you think of as it's an academic problem to solve, and what we've seen through this is a very complex problem to address and on a number of fronts. So academically, one of the things we look at are these courses, and what we found is that there's not a single course or a single answer as to what the difficult courses are. It really varies by major. There are some common themes in those courses, and we use those to focus our tutoring and supplemental instruction and efforts academically and advising. This slide is just the big courses, the courses that have large numbers. So this takes out of context the by major, excuse me, the by major attributes. So picking college algebra out of that may be a problem course for certain majors and not a problem for others. But it helps us highlight one side of this conversation, what we're working on and analyzing. Staying with that college algebra for a moment, historically that's been the course that is the measure of college math. What we're looking at in questioning is that the appropriate math for that discipline and that direction? The challenge that a course like this offers, and what we try to do is teach the middle. So if you have STEM majors in this college algebra course and you have a business major in this college algebra, we teach the middle of those, where a STEM major may be more appropriately starting at pre-calculus and business may be more appropriately working in contemporary math or statistics. So one of the things that we are working through now and work on through the summer with the deans and start talking with department chairs is looking at some of these courses and make sure it's the appropriate course for that. So not easier, not harder, just the right fit. The other part of this is how we use that information then to focus our efforts. So you may remember a little over a year ago we changed the MAC, the Mustang Advising Center, to TASP, Tutoring and Academic Support Programs. One of the changes we made is an open tutoring schedule. So again, historically it would be math sessions were on these days, these times. Now we try to have it as a walk-in schedule. Anytime a student needs help with this subject or that subject, we have tutors there and available. So these are the numbers we captured out of that. Unfortunately, I can't give you a comparison because now it's an apples and oranges. This is some good numbers in these areas where we made offerings. Supplemental instruction is another. We're using this DFWI data to better understand where to focus our efforts in SI. And if you're not familiar, supplemental instruction, we select high-performing students that have already taken the class, been successful in the class. We hire them, they then work with the professor, and they attend the class as part of their work. They attend the class with those students, and then offer these intensive tutoring sessions at the guidance and direction of that faculty member. adding courses to that list, and those shift and move a little bit as we better understand where those needs are. So again, just how we use some of that data and then focusing our efforts and understanding from this analysis. I think that was too.
Thank you. So we obviously have a lot more data than that. That's just kind of an overview. But what we've been doing is looking at a lot of the data, trying to determine exactly where we're losing students, who we are losing, and so that we all operate from the same playbook, we came up with a schema, if you will, and it's a very, very simple schema. But what's important for us is that we are beginning the retention prospect right here with the way we communicate with prospective students all the way through graduation. And key for us in here is that we're doing more than just retaining students. They're thriving, and there's obviously some interplay there. We have risk indicators that Mr. Dietz went over, the data that informs that, existing resources, and then over the next several slides we'll go over our interventions here and the planned time frame for implementing those interventions. And so as this would be a living schema over the years, these eventually will move over to existing resources. This informing data could change some. Risk indicators will change dramatically as we move forward in time and we realize new and different student populations. And so this has to be rooted in this and this. And that's kind of the way this works. But with that said, for this fall, we actually have a number of implementations planned from here. And I'll let Fred talk about this first one.
So the first one is many institutions are utilizing software to help with the retention process. And so this is something we've looked at. We looked at several companies over the course of the last year. EAB, that's the company. They're out of DC and Virginia. They have a product called Student Success Collaborative. And I think the beauty of this is that it is predictive. It will talk to a little bit of what Dr. Lamb said earlier before the student even gets here. So the idea is that this software really looks at a lot of data, 10 years worth of student history information, and lets us know where we can be proactive. Right now we're a little reactive, and so we need to change that to be a little more proactive. And when I say proactive, I mean, so Fred Dietz comes into Midwestern in the fall as a first-time freshman. We know before he steps foot on campus that we've got to get him to certain resources before he's even a student in his first class. There are apps tied to this as well that students can use, real-time information to help them, guide them through the process. So we're looking at that. We've put in a budget request, and Tony Vidmar and Dr. Shipley are working on this as well from a different angle too. So we're excited about possibly moving forward with this.
And so we've had teams of individuals this fall and spring working on these different implementations. And so residential peer mentoring, this directly addresses knowing that 72% of our non-returners live in the residence halls. Now we know it's not the residence hall environment itself. It has to do with geography, it has to do with unmet need, it has to do with academic preparation, it has to do with a lot of things. What we are doing with residential peer mentoring, though, is we are trying to take some of the lessons learned from the Pretty Scholars, for example, and scale up a high-touch, intrusive intervention environment for an at-risk or marginalized population or an underrepresented population. And so with residential peer mentoring, we will have, beginning this fall, 20 peer mentors dispersed through our 4 residence halls where freshmen live. And they will all have the same base level core competencies and training, but they will each have specialized training in one of 5 areas, and we'll disperse those through the halls to make sure we cover those 5 areas. One of those areas is diversity and inclusion. Right? We know that a number of the students we're losing are minoritized or marginalized. We will have some trained in health education. We believe that the key to some of the mental health concerns higher education seeing across the board is health education and a holistic approach to wellness. We believe, and so that will address that portion. We will have peer mentors trained in sexual misconduct response that will work directly with our Title IX office. And we will have peer mentors trained in leadership and involvement with trying to attach students to campus, especially given the geography changes that we've seen in our student population. Extended orientation, phase 1, what we would like to do is take our freshman orientation and essentially make that a year-long process. Phase 1 is taking that from summer orientation to what we call roundup, which is prior to the first week of classes, and equipping our students with certain core competencies, and we will expand that in years 2 and 3. Cross-Cultural Pathways is a program from our Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Multicultural Affairs that includes cross-cultural councils for students, and it's an effort to create larger, more tight-knit communities for our marginalized students, and there will be 3 years in which we will implement that. We have a coaching pilot that a number of us are participating in this semester as coaches with at-risk students. We will extend that in 19. Mr. Dietz is leading a cross-functional team that will study different processes or perhaps barriers for students. This next year, they're going to study the registration process. Hopefully, as Dr. Carlston said, we can get away from some paper processes and a more automated process. That's the type of thing that we'll be looking at. And then finally, we are implementing a new co-curricular framework that will guide a number of our actions in student affairs, and this is what it looks like. There's a lot of detail that goes into this. This is just a very high level overview, but in the first year, we want students to explore things. And if you will, this is kind of the thematic things we want to achieve that year. These are the goals. So we want them thematically academic foundations. We want them to define academic expectations for themselves, and let's define those as well. So that's how that reads. The second year, we want students to experience, right, and get more deeply involved with things and trained in leadership. And then third and fourth year, engage through internships, resume building, really get ready to hit the job market. So that's kind of when we're talking about thriving in our student retention life cycle, this is what we're talking about. And so this is our new programming model that we're implementing across student affairs in the fall. On the back of that, in a lot more detail, each year we will have actions for students to take for academic success, campus involvement, career preparation, and social responsibility. The following fall, 20, we will extend our orientation, phase 2, that will take our orientation program through the fall. Cross-cultural pathways, phase 2, we will introduce additional councils into that and extend the leadership training. The goal with that program over 3 years is that it's really a student-run process, but we have to take 2 to 3 years to train them up and get that flow going. We will fully implement the coaching program that we're piloting this spring, and we will pilot again next year, or at least extend the pilot. Mr. Dietz's cross-functional team will study something. We think that that will largely be informed on what they find through the registration study. We'll obviously implement the registration recommendations from the previous year's team. And then Engage Pathways is actually a software platform that will allow us to track students doing this and allow us to attach credentials to their co-curricular transcripts as they complete these items. And then finally, 3 years out, we will finish off extended orientation, taking it through the spring. We will implement our third year cross-cultural pathways, where the goal is by that point for the different cross-cultural councils, student councils that we have, that is student-led. And then we will have recommendations from the previous year's cross-functional team. And if we are assessing everything correctly, these move over here, and we have a whole new list here because we have different risk indicators.
Any questions?
I have a question. How much of your retention analysis, if any, includes some sort of exit interview from the students who did not return?
We have 2 areas for that. One, we actually have 100% participation in withdrawing. So if a student leaves during the semester, we capture that. The only other way that we do that for students who stop out between semesters and they complete a semester and don't return is through financial aid. We'll send a survey to them, and what we've seen is the highest risk factor they over time is they list as personal, right? And so not a great deal of detail. But obviously we see academic hitting some there. They just didn't do as well. Finances, and actually, community services frankly pops up every now and then, which I think is very, very important. The work the Chamber's doing, and why we're very appreciative of the work they're doing, because we think that engages a geographically distant student.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for your report. If you all are interested in anything where you might join them for lunch, and we had the opportunity with our committee to have an extensive report, so thank you for that. Item 19-79, textbook and courseware affordability and access program. Dr. Lamb, please review this proposed program and recommendation for us. You may find that on page 18. Notebook.
Textbook affordability has been an issue for a number of years on college campuses, and with new mediums, especially electronic mediums, we are beginning to identify solutions to that to make textbooks more affordable. And what we're seeing is not only students having difficulty paying for textbooks, we see, and I'm sure our faculty see, students that never get the textbook. Right, and therefore they're behind in class. And I still teach in the graduate school, and I have students in the graduate school who sometimes don't procure a textbook, and it's a real challenge in making sure that they understand and learn the material. This is a pilot program we are proposing that will help with textbook affordability and ensure that students have their electronic textbooks day one of the course. And so our bookstore provider on campus, which is Follett, they have a program called Include Ed, and Include Ed works with the different publishing houses, and for faculty who so identify electronic resources for their courses, Follett will procure those, and those are available to the students at a discount, and is available to them on day one of their course through our learning management system. And so we believe that is a good first step towards affordability of textbooks. We would like to pilot this program with Computer Science 1013 in the fall. That is Computer Concepts and Application, or Applicants, taught by Dr. Halverson. What this will do is place the courseware cost on the student's bill. The students can opt out if they can procure it at a better cost somewhere else, but certainly it is the required course material. And we'd like to pilot this and see how it goes and report back to you in November if we would like to expand that beyond the pilot phase.
And how much cheaper is it for a textbook on the electronic versus hard?
You know, it depends. I mean, it can be up to 25-30% less expensive just because you don't have the printing costs associated. With this particular program, we are estimating it's about 25% less expensive than procuring the textbook through the publishing house or other sources, just because of the contract that Follett has with the publishing houses. But it will depend by courses. Some will be less than that and some will be more, but we're estimating about a quarter.
And the goal would be that if this works, then to incorporate it both in traditional style learning as well as digital learning online?
It would, but it's a digital program because all the course material would be digital, and it's not a required program, so it would be, if we expanded it beyond the pilot course, it would really be at each individual faculty member's discretion if they want to look at digital course material.
But this isn't just restricted to online classes. This could also be the traditional classroom setting.
Absolutely.
Which is probably that computer course is a traditional
Yes,
classroom setting.
Well, I think this one's actually an online
Is it
course,
online?
but it could be used for the traditional setting. Absolutely, because each course would have D2 or learning management system access.
Now, does the student get to keep the digital copy when he finishes the course, or?
I don't know. I can find out for you. I really don't know. Some, I don't know. I don't know. I was about to take a guess, but I don't want to be wrong, so I'll check for you.
Any additional questions? Thank you. Chairman Crosno, I move approval of this pilot program with Follett Higher Education for the fall 2019 semester as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion about the issue? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Item 19-80, May 2019 graduating class. The administration recommends approval of the candidates for May graduation as presented, beginning on page 30 of your board book. As noted in the remote enrollment management report, there are 754 students on the list compared to 734 in 2018. Chairman Crosno, I move approval of the list of candidates as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hope not. Motion carries.
I was just thankful I did not have to read all those. That's really good. We now have several items related to academic programming and curriculum. First, item 19-81, the addition of academic minors in the West College of Education. Information regarding the 4 proposed academic minors is outlined in the board book on page 19. Dr. Johnston, please comment on this item.
Thank you, Regent Marks. These 4 minors, a couple of things about them. With the addition of minors and the signature minors, we have a series of courses, in this case, that are already on our inventory in the books. Recognizing them formally as a minor, it allows us to transcript and recognize that for a student, and it bundles them, if you will, in a marketable way for the student, so it enhances that student's degree of marketability. So these minors from the West College of Education are just that. It's recognizing areas of specialization that are desired for our public school teachers, and these would also be available to other majors that might want to teach at a community college or higher ed later on and have some formalized background in adult learning or in technology, incorporating technology into the classroom. So these minors can be done without adding courses or resources to the college.
Any questions? Chairman Crosno, I move approval of the addition of these minors as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Item 19-82, the addition of an academic minor in the Thane College of Fine Arts, page 20. Dr. Johnston, please comment on this recommendation.
This was one of the ones that was approved and recommended as a signature minor. Just broadly, the criteria is that it would appeal to a number of different majors and open specifically for that. Again, it's a series of courses that we have on our inventory that we can bundle and recognize. The more overt connection you might see is, of course, the connection between majors in music and theater. Public school teachers that, as the resources are squeezed for the fine arts in public schools, having a teacher that is more broadly trained or educated in that area, a business major that may want to work in that industry, and then, as you know from our MSU community, we have a number of MSU employees that are engaged in community theater, so even as a personal enrichment minor for some of those students. So that's the idea or the emphasis for this.
Any additional questions? Chairman Crosno, I move approval of the addition of this minor as presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item 19-83, addition to core curriculum. For our new regents, changes to our core curriculum must be approved by the Board of Regents and then approved by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Dr. Johnston, please review these recommended changes as printed beginning on page 2.
Thank you. Internally, there's a considerable process for vetting new core additions, and our core curriculum committee is, and you'll hear some of the faculty we recommended for tenure and promotion serving on this. So it's an extensive process between the department and the core curriculum committee, and then to academic council and so on. Basically, what these core curricular additions allow us are a couple of things. One is area flexibility. When we bring, say, 800 freshmen to campus, they all have to complete the same 42-hour core. If we only have a limited number of options, say 2 or 3 options, and getting 800 students through 3 options is a taxing on our resources. So it adds a little bit of flexibility for us in the scheduling and the breadth that we can offer, and flexibility and interest for our students. So some of these are adding to specific areas of the course. Some are in optional areas, and that's what the designations reflect, but that's the idea and intent for adding these courses.
Any questions?
So instead of forcing them to go to Western civilization, they could choose world civilization. Is that the thought? Or is this replacing Western?
No, it doesn't replace. There are specific parts of history, for example, they must take, and then there are optional areas. So if they are interested in studying that in a greater depth, that allows flexibility in another area of the core for them to work through.
Any other questions? Chairman Crosno, I move approval of these additions to the core as presented.
Once again, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Our next item is 19-84, proposal for the addition of academic doctoral programs. Currently, MSU offers baccalaureate and master's level degree programs only. Dr. Johnston will review with the board information regarding expanding offerings to doctoral programs. You'll find this information on page 21.
Thank you. This would involve a shift of approval for MSU to offer this level of degrees. So this is initial discussion, and to let you know where we are. This is part of our strategic plan that was previously approved by this board. In that strategic plan, they had recommended 3 programs as starting. The 2 that we chose to begin with were ones that we had experience with, and they have a natural synergy with each other. The doctorate in ed leadership, we've done one cooperatively with the University of North Texas for some time. So we have an experience and level there. As you know, MSU wrote and offered the first discipline-specific master's in radiologic science. We have a strong alumni base that are now asking us for the first doctorate of rad science. So I think we have a faculty that has pulse of that profession and understanding the timing of it. After that first master's, I believe there were 14 that followed us, universities that offer that master's in radiologic science. It gives us a core, 18 hours that we can teach together, research, methodology, statistics. We don't need half a dozen different departments teaching those, so it allows us within our existing resources to do this. Within these 3 colleges, or 2 colleges and the graduate school, those deans and faculty have been working through these programs for a little over a year now, understanding how we can do this and how we can deliver it within existing resources for the first couple of years before we would need to add faculty as it grows. The curricula have been researched and written and gone through all of the approval processes internally. The timeline at this point, there are a few things we want to polish and clarify for the proposals and the applications over the summer. We would present these to you fully in August. If they were approved by the board in August, we would submit applications simultaneously to SACS and the coordinating board. We would anticipate that would trigger on-site visits by one or both, because this is moving us up to another level of granting degrees. Optimistically, about a year from the time we submit, we would be able to offer first classes. Depending on the timing and the requirements, that spring 21, fall 21 would be likely. If this moved better than or faster than expected, the faculty in those colleges and administration feel like they could do a fall 20. It would be tight, but we'd be working just ahead. But realistically, I think 21 is when we would see this if everything moves forward.
Any questions?
How many universities offer a PhD in rad science?
0. We would be the first.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, that's pretty exciting.
It is.
Thank you. I think these fit well with our mission and who we are as a university, and being very specific and very strategic in the degrees that we offer.
Any other comments? This item is presented as a point of information only, and we look forward to receiving the full proposal in August. Item 19-85, Faculty Emeritus Status. A copy of the policy related to Faculty Emeritus is included in the board book on page 38. Dr. Johnston will present recommendations for emeritus status in closed session later today. However, if any board member has a question about the process, now would be the time to ask a process-only question. Item 19-86 and 19-87, faculty promotion and tenure. While specific personnel recommendations will be discussed in closed session later in the meeting, Dr. Johnston will present general information regarding the faculty promotion and tenure processes at this time.
Our current policy, faculty are invited, the typical path are invited in their 5th year to apply for tenure and or promotion. Some faculty may be brought in with rank at an associate or full, so you may see variations in that. Tenure is a required application, promotion is elective. The levels of review, a faculty member submits a portfolio detailing their work in teaching, scholarship, and service over their time at the university. The department chair would be the first level of review. Then there's a college tenure and promotion committee, the college dean, the university tenure and promotion committee, and then myself in consultation with the president, and then we bring recommendations to the Board of Regents. We still have this. We have a couple that, as we phased in the 2014 plan, there were some that opted to remain with the 2008. The last of those you will see this year, just in time to redo the policy, and you'll have a 2014 phasing out and then 2020 continuing on.
Any questions on policy or process only? Chairman Crosno, that concludes the presentation of the Enrollment Management Academic and Student Affairs items, and I think we're ready for lunch.
We'll recess for lunch. The boardroom will be locked during our lunch break, and we plan to resume the meeting at 1:15. And is there any place where we're supposed to go?
Yes, for the board members, we're going to go.